early 52 BCE, Gaul stands on the brink of its greatest uprising yet. Rising from the heart of Arvernia is Vercingetorix, a charismatic noble uniting fractious tribes under one banner to expel Roman rule. Meanwhile, Caesar's legions, powerful but overextended, strain to maintain control while politics in Rome threaten to pull him away. The stage is set for a decisive confrontation that will determine Gaul's destiny, one in which Caesar's seemingly unstoppable ambition meets the fierce determination of a newly united enemy. In the sacred forests, rich with magical significance, Gallic chieftains gather to plan a sweeping revolt. They know Caesar, distracted by tensions in Italy, may not be able to rejoin his army in time. These leaders recall the suffering Rome has inflicted upon all of Gaul, oppressive tributes, mass enslavements, and the loss of cherished freedoms. Convinced that now is the moment to strike, the Carnudi ignite hostilities by killing every Roman merchant in their capital, Cenabo. News of this violent act spreads from grove to grove, reaching the heartlands of the Averni, where a towering figure emerges. That figure is Vercingetorix, son of Celtillus, a one-time supreme leader of Gaul who was executed by his own people. Vercingetorix, whose name likely means great king of warriors, swiftly gathers multiple tribes, punishing any who hesitate and forging a disciplined army in a matter of weeks. Exploiting the widespread anger at Caesar's harsh rule, he reignites a pan-Gallic desire for independence. Once divided by old rivalries, the Averni and other tribes find themselves rallying around Vercingetorix's determination and fierce leadership. Thus begins the most formidable challenge Caesar has yet faced, a unified coalition of Gauls bent on reclaiming their lands and their freedom from Roman dominion.
Did you know that most people who watch our documentaries aren't subscribed yet? If you enjoy animated maps and history, join our community. Leave a like and subscribe so you never miss the next episodes.
With the tribes in open revolt, Vercingetorix insisted on a radical strategy to undermine Caesar's legions, the scorched earth policy. Rather than let the Romans seize valuable crops and shelter, he ordered villages burned, fields razed, and food stocks destroyed. This harsh measure demanded immense sacrifice from local populations. Families watched their homes and livelihoods reduced to ashes. Yet Vercingetorix argued it was preferable to fueling Rome's war machine. Only one major settlement refused, Avaricum, defended by the betrayals and strategically perched on high ground. Convinced they could withstand a Roman assault, they defied Vercingetorix's orders to abandon and destroy the oppidum. In response, Caesar deployed his standard siege methods: siege towers, ramparts, and well-drilled infantry. The defenders fought valiantly, leveraging the city's natural defenses and fortifications, but Roman discipline proved insurmountable in the end. When Caesar's troops finally breached the walls, they unleashed a horrific slaughter. Of Avaricum's estimated 40,000 inhabitants, a staggering figure comparable to the total civilian casualties on British soil during World War II bombings, fewer than 800 escaped. That grim number reverberated across Gaul, confirming Vercingetorix's warning about Roman ruthlessness. Even though the betrayals had acted against his advice, their annihilation spurred other tribes to embrace his leadership. The fall of Avaricum demonstrated Caesar's lethal efficiency, but also galvanized Gallic resistance. For every triumph the Romans celebrated, fresh hatred and fear sprang up among the tribes, fueling the fires of a conflict that was only growing more desperate. Buoyed by his success at Avaricum, Caesar set his sights on Gergovia, a formidable hill fort deep in Arvernian territory, Vercingetorix's homeland. Perched on steep slopes and protected by fortified earthworks, Gergovia granted the Gallic defenders a potent positional advantage. Caesar hoped to force Vercingetorix into open combat, but the landscape severely limited Roman maneuvering. Initially, the Aedui, longtime allies of Rome, remained on Caesar's side. Yet amid growing discontent and rumors of Caesar's vulnerability, some Iduan factions switched allegiance to Vercingetorix. This shift undermined Caesar's supply lines and rattled his confidence as he prepared for a climactic engagement. Attempting to fracture the Gallic forces, Caesar advanced multiple columns toward Gergovia, hoping to feint an attack and force a decisive breakthrough. However, miscommunication and overextension led Roman units too far upslope. Sensing an opportunity, Gallic warriors surged forward, bolstered by Vercingetorix's leadership and the protective terrain. They inflicted severe casualties on the exposed legionaries, forcing Caesar to retreat in disarray. Gergovia thus became Caesar's first clear-cut defeat in Gaul, a jarring testament that even Rome's disciplined legions could falter against the right combination of strategy and geography. Word of Caesar's setback spread rapidly, emboldening more tribes to join Vercingetorix and causing many of Caesar's remaining allies to question Rome's grasp on Gaul. In the aftermath, Vercingetorix's stature soared, proving that with unity and clever tactics, the Gauls could stand against the conqueror. Retreating to Alesia, perched on a plateau in modern-day Burgundy, Vercingetorix readied himself for a decisive stand. Caesar, determined to crush the uprising, arrived with 10 to 12 legions, some estimates exceeding 50,000 infantry, and prepared a brutal strategy of encirclement and starvation. First, he oversaw the construction of a 16-kilometer circumvallation around the hill, isolating Vercingetorix's forces. Though Gallic cavalry attempted to disrupt these fortifications, they achieved little. Fearing a massive relief army would soon march to liberate Alesia, Caesar then ordered a 20-kilometer contravallation, girded with elaborate traps to keep external rescuers at bay. In his Commentari de Bello Gallico, Caesar details these fortifications. He felled tree trunks and sharpened them, placing them in pits 5 feet deep. Anyone venturing into these pits would be impaled, and we called these cipi. In front of them, on slanting lines, we dug holes 3 feet deep, each containing smooth, fire-hardened stakes covered with brush. We arranged 8 rows of these, naming them lilies because of their shape. Ahead of these, we buried iron spikes everywhere, calling them stimuli. The Mandubi inside Alesia soon ran out of food. Their livestock was slaughtered, grain stores emptied, and Caesar suggests that some Gauls even considered feeding on the elderly. Ultimately, Vercingetorix ordered all non-combatants, women, elderly, and children, to leave, hoping to preserve precious rations for his warriors. These desperate civilians descended the hill and pleaded with Caesar for mercy, offering themselves as slaves to avoid starvation. Yet Caesar refused, noting that he had no desire to relieve the strain on Alesia. He wrote, he turned them away, believing that doing so would intensify the defenders' desperation, for he assumed they would have to be readmitted behind the walls. In a tragic turn, the Gallic defenders also refused to readmit their own kin, unwilling or unable to sacrifice the small reserves of food that remained. Caught between the Roman lines and the city's ramparts, these innocent non-combatants languished in a wasteland of hunger and despair. Historians still debate the greater cruelty, that of Vercingetorix and his lieutenants for casting out their people, or of Caesar for condemning them to slow death rather than granting them any form of sanctuary. Caesar himself likely faced shortages in his own army, yet he judged that leaving the civilians to suffer would sap the defenders' resolve. A few weeks into the siege, a long-awaited Gallic relief force, said to total 240,000 infantry and 8,000 cavalry, finally appeared before Alesia. Determined to break the Roman blockade from both inside and out, the reinforcements attacked Caesar's outer fortifications, while Vercingetorix's garrison attempted a simultaneous sortie from atop the plateau. Fighting raged throughout the day, with the Romans defending behind their walls, trenches, and ramparts, straining to repel the converging assaults. A nighttime attack also took place, reportedly involving a young Mark Antony among those who distinguished themselves in repelling the assault. Even so, the Gauls soon discovered a vulnerable northern section of the Roman lines, steep terrain too wide to be perfectly fortified. At midday, 60,000 chosen Gallic warriors launched a decisive strike against this weak point, while Vercingetorix led a fresh offensive from within Alesia. Roman supply lines were stretched thin. Caesar himself noted how rattled his men became when they heard fierce battle behind them, recognizing that their survival depended on another sector's success. The crisis peaked when the Gallic forces bridged ditches, overwhelmed traps, and nearly breached the ramparts. Labienus, commanding that segment, dispatched a desperate plea for support. Caesar personally led 39 cohorts, a third of his army, to that front, donning his distinctive purple cloak. Recognized by the enemy, he instantly became their prime target. Yet in a sudden maneuver, Roman cavalry charged the Gauls from behind, throwing the relief force into utter confusion. Caught between two Roman thrusts, they broke ranks and fled, sustaining heavy casualties in the pursuit. By the following morning, Vercingetorix grasped that continued resistance would only destroy his men. Gathering his surviving warriors, he declared he had fought not for personal gain, but for the freedom of Gaul. Some accounts say he then allowed them to choose whether he should die or be handed to Caesar. Determined to spare more bloodshed, they surrendered him alive. Vercingetorix, clad in full armor, is said to have ridden out and placed his weapons at Caesar's feet. He was imprisoned for 6 years in Rome's Tullianum, Mamertine, and ultimately executed after being paraded in Caesar's triumph. After nearly 8 years from 58 to 51 BCE and an estimated 1 million dead, Caesar finally subdues Gaul. He winters in Biberact, where his campaign began, stamping out residual uprisings through raids, massacres, and plunder, yet also bestowing titles and privileges on loyal or repentant chieftains. With the region pacified, he cultivates a Roman-aligned aristocracy to secure lasting stability and prosperity. This policy proves effective. Gallo-Roman culture will flourish, as evidenced by monuments still standing in modern France. Yet suspicion grows in Rome, and Caesar's immense power now propels him toward a fateful crossing of the Rubicon and the ensuing civil war. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Caesar's definitive triumph in Gaul and the dawn of a new Roman age, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. Join us next time to explore the fateful crossing of the Rubicon and the civil war that would reshape Rome forever.